Phonics. Ugh, right? It's that word that can make even the most confident parent just scratch their head. If you've ever felt like your child's school is speaking a totally different language when it comes to reading, you are not alone. So think of this as your survival guide to cracking the code. I'm sure you've been there. You ask your kid to read a simple word, like cat, and what you hear back is this kind of strange, drawn-out sound. Cuh-a-tuh. Well, that sound? That's phonics in action. It's the basic way schools teach our kids the link between letters and the sounds they make. Okay, so that leads to a really big question, though. Hearing them sound out the letters is one thing, but is it actually working? Is there a right way for you to help them at home? Yes, absolutely. And trust me, getting this right can make all the difference in their reading journey. All right, first things first, let's decode this code. Sometimes it really feels like teachers have their own secret language, full of jargon. But don't worry, we're going to translate it all. This isn't a test, okay? Think of this as your personal cheat sheet. So let's just dive right in and break down some of that jargon. You're going to hear words like phoneme, grapheme, and blending. These are the absolute building blocks of learning to read. Seriously, if you can get a handle on just these 5 terms, you're going to understand every school report and parent-teacher meeting from now on. Okay, let's zero in on the big one, the most important one of all, the phoneme. A phoneme is just the smallest sound in a word. So take the word shop. It's got 4 letters, but listen, it only has 3 sounds, sh, ah, p. See? It's all about what you hear, not what you see on the page. That idea is, well, it's the whole foundation of phonics. Okay, so if a phoneme is the sound, then the grapheme is just the fancy word for how you write it down. For example, the f sound. You can write it with an F, like in fish, or with a PH, like in phone. Same sound, different letters. And yeah, this right here, this is pretty much the reason English spelling can be such a nightmare. Okay, listen up, because this next part might just be the most important thing we talk about today. This is the one thing teachers wish every single parent knew. It's a tiny little mistake that causes huge problems with reading, and the crazy thing is, so many of us do it without even realizing it. Here's the deal. It is all about using pure sounds. When you make the sound for the letter M, it should be a long, continuous not m-uh. Because if you add that extra sound at the end, it's actually called a schwa. And your child tries to blend t, they get mahata. And mahata isn't a word, right? It's just nothing.
Seriously? Just let that sink in for a second. This one little habit, tacking an onto the end of sounds, is the #1 reason kids can't push those sounds together and actually read the word. Getting this right is an absolute game changer.
So we know getting the sounds right is absolutely crucial. But what happens if the teaching method isn't consistent? Well, to make things just a little more complicated, not all schools actually teach phonics the exact same way. There are different systems out there, and mixing them up can get really confusing for a little one. You'll probably run into one of 2 popular systems. There's Read Write Inc., or RWI, which is really structured and often uses a puppet named Fred who only talks in sounds. Then there's Jolly Phonics, which is all about using actions for each sound. Look, neither one is better than the other. The key thing for you is to just know which system your child's school is using so you can be on the same page at home. And this brings us to one of the biggest mismatches of all. So often, a really well-meaning grandma or grandpa, or even a tutor, will try to help by singing the alphabet song. The problem is, that song is all about letter names, A, B, C, instead of the letter sounds. And right here, you can see exactly why this is such a disaster for a kid who's just starting out. If they're taught the sounds K-a-tuh, they can push them together to read cat. But a child who's been taught the names, C-A-T, they're just left with a confusing jumble they can never, ever decode. Okay, now let's talk about something that I know parents find super weird. When schools ask kids to read words that are complete and utter nonsense. You might hear them called alien words or pseudo words, and believe it or not, they're a huge part of the official phonics screening. Yeah, what are these alien words? And more importantly, why on earth would a teacher ask a child to read a word that isn't even real? Well, they're exactly what they sound like. Just simple, made-up nonsense words like thap or osk. And they have a really specific job to do. They're a key part of the official phonics screening check that kids in the UK take in year 1. But there's actually a really clever reason for this. First up, it's the ultimate test of their decoding skills. A child can't possibly have memorized the word VAP, right? They've never seen it. So to read it, they have to use their phonics. It proves they can really read, not just recognize words they already know. And second, it just gets them ready for the real test. It builds their confidence, so there are no surprises. Okay, so after all of that, what are the big takeaways? Let's boil it down to 3 golden rules. Number 1, always use pure sounds. No Number 2, find out what system your school uses and stick with it. And number 3, focus on the skill of blending sounds together. That's real reading, not just memorizing shapes. And that really leaves us with one final, and I think really powerful question for you to think about as you help your child on this journey. When they look at a word, are they truly learning how to crack the code and read it for themselves, or are they just memorizing? Because that difference, well, it's everything.